It's funny. Did you see the kind of James Carville rants lately about
Yeah.
the DNC? And
And he's right. And he's 100%
he
right on what.
he's not fucking holding back. That's for sure.
No, and he doesn't have to, because he's got his fuck you money, and he won when
Sure.
people didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, he is not incorrect. I think it's, with all his stuff, it's a little hyperbole.
Yeah.
But I hear, we will call more civil versions of what he said, from my Democrat consultant friends. They
Right.
think the party is dysfunctional, and they think way too many people, it's way too bureaucratic, and people have drunk the Kool-Aid, and, this kind of NGO to campaign back to NGO stuff. And, in it, you get a bunch of kids. I mean, it used to, that you would work on campaigns, local campaigns, you would do your thing, and then you were brought into the national committees for basically polish. They become a finishing school. And then you could go out and do campaigns. Now what it is that kind of big donors have bought their kids slots to committees. And so you go from college.
How interesting.
You go from college, not 100%, but there's a lot of it. And then all of a sudden you wind up in these places, and you've never done a fucking campaign. You've never knocked on a door. You've never manned a phone bank. You've never written a piece of mail. You've never looked at a survey. And all of a sudden you are a Washington expert. And, you're obviously a smart person because you went to an elite college. And so it doesn't take you long to learn the jargon, and you gain your opinion from what you see on cable talk and podcasts and shit. So you can kind of like mouth the thing, and all of a sudden you're running campaigns that you have no business running or being involved with or making a decision.
Welcome, Chris. We are a week after the election. I tell you what, the news is Trump's been moving pretty fast and furious with his transition. He's named a lot of people. I tell you what, is that where you want to start? Let's start with cabinet positions. Let's start with who's been nominated so far.
Yeah.
What's your biggest surprise? What's your single biggest surprise on a nomination?
Rubio.
Really? Not Hegseth for defense.
Hegseth, and we can kind of get into him. Hegseth,
yeah.
If you had to say, well, Trump picked a Fox News host and as a cabinet member, you would go, okay, I kind of get it.
Okay, yeah, got it.
But if Rubio, who is both, fiercely anti-Putin, fiercely anti-Hamas, fiercely anti-communist party China, I mean, he's kind of like our 80s Reagan hardline, and so I think that is contrary to this kind of isolationist kind of pro-Putin thing, because it's like, and, similarly, Hegseth, on TV anyway, and in photos, he's being photographed with Zelensky, and he's really anti-Putin. So that, I think, but Rubio more, because Rubio is kind of, culturally, he's way different and has never been part of that crowd. And he also was the guy that went after Trump really hard in the debates in 2016. So I just think it's an interesting, that surprised. I didn't think it was going to be him.
I think that's valid. I mean, I don't want to get too in the philosophical weeds, but I will say, I think Trump has a gift for seeing which people he can bend to his will and which people he can't. And he tests them pretty early on. So he tested Rubio with little Marco Rubio. Rubio came out and hit him really hard. And then Rubio then became like most other Republicans and bent the knee and did whatever he was told to do.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz is very similar in that Ted Cruz, Trump insulted his wife, said his father killed Kennedy. And then Cruz also hit him quite hard and said horrible things about him, and then said glowing things about him. So it's funny that you say that, because what I have come to realize or come to believe, and my belief could be wrong, is that, I think leadership is a really interesting dance between following and leading. And I think what Trump realizes is many of these people are much better followers than they are leaders. And I think Rubio will do whatever he's told to do or believes is in his political future best interest. If that means selling Alaska back to Russia for some reason, he'll find a way to make that circle square. He'll figure out a way to do it. And I think that's what doesn't really surprise me about picking Marco Rubio. What surprised me about Hegseth is that I don't know what that gets him. I know what actually Marco Rubio gets him in a way. I think it gets him an air of institutionalism because Rubio's kind of an institutional, it's been around for a long time. So it gives an air of credibility. I know what Hegseth gets him actually. That's my take on it, on those two specific cases.
Yeah, no, fair, fair, and wait and see. But I was struck that all of them are from, then if you count Mike Huckabee as, which is an interesting evangelical Jewish kind of connection ambassador to Israel, and you add in Stefanik for, again, United Nations, and what's the other one? John Thune, he kind of is now the Senate Majority Leader, as we predicted, by the way, last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
This would not be a cabinet or an administration. If you said this was the Mitt Romney administration, you would go, of course it is. Right? I mean, these are all very, very institutional. I'm not going to call them Reagan Republicans, but these are kind of all institutional, right of center kind of Republicans, and they are not this kind of populist thing that a lot of the press thought that Trump was. Now, who the fuck knows where it goes? Who the fuck knows if these people stay nominees? I mean, being nominated isn't being confirmed, and they could find that there are small children buried in somebody's basement, and, that's the end of that. But again, I think it was, I guess I was surprised that it's so conventional, and he took Elon and Vivek and he put him in charge of the nothing important department. I mean,
the Dogecoin department.
Yeah, I mean, but potentially, I mean, obviously that, it's an important thing to, if they can figure out a way to innovate government. And I also think it's, by the way, I also think it's kind of smart that, like, who are the bomb throwers? Well, let's put them in charge of something where, they might be brilliant and they might, but if they throw them bombs, it doesn't hurt me. I mean, so there's an interesting, wait and see. I mean, obviously it's clear that JFK is not going to be running fucking, the FDA. But on the other hand, what's her name is Kristen Noem as Homeland Security is like,
what the fuck is that? That surprised the shit out of me.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, and again, and I think it's, that's an important piece, and
I mean, I would put her maybe a USDA where they slaughter animals, not
that would be fucking great. I mean, that would be the greatest thing ever. She, her confirmation was like, I know something about killing small animals. It's like,
yeah, exactly. I've already offed a couple dogs. It looks like, I don't know if it's just a growing chorus of not suspicion, but of assumption. But Matt Whitaker got the nod for Attorney General. Is that right? Is that finalized? It looks like.
Yeah,
Is his name Matt Whitaker, the former guy from the Trump admin.
Yeah, I didn't follow that.
I actually thought there was a pretty good chance that Ken. Sorry, go ahead.
Good. No, I was babbling.
I was just gonna say I thought there was a pretty good chance that it was going to be Ken Paxton from Texas as Attorney General.
Yeah, I think he comes with way too much baggage. I mean,
I get that.
I don't think he would make it through a confirmation hearing. I'm sorry. I've just been involved with the exodus again from Twitter to Blue Sky.
Are you now getting involved in Blue Sky?
No, I've had a Blue Sky account for that, and you go on, and there's a very good follow. He's a professor of literature. God, is it Bates College? It's not, but it's a small liberal arts college, and he's in it. If you like Cormac McCarthy, he's a great follower. Yeah, and he's got some really good lectures. Okay. But Aaron Gwynn, but he described Blue Sky. He said it's like going to a faculty meeting, but you have to read the notes instead of just listening. And again, I mean, I think that everybody's Twitter experience must be different than mine. Because it's like I curate people from different viewpoints who I want to here. And, if
Totally.
they have followers, or sometimes you follow people and you go, oh, they're a fucking kook, or oh, he's a Nazi. They posted a couple and you see it and you just unfollow and you don't get that shit on your feed. But it's like,
Yeah.
it's like the old joke. I didn't come here to, what was it? The woman goes to the psychiatrist and he shows her a series of inflots. And she said, "Doctor, I didn't come here to watch pornography." Right. And I kind of think that's,
I never heard more.
yeah, it's
That's a good one.
I believe the joke. You can kind of get the joke. It's like he's showing her this. What's this? It's a man fucking. And what's this? It's a woman fucking. It's two women fucking.
Yeah.
And she goes, like, "Doctor, I
Yeah.
didn't come
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
to see pornography." But again, I get it. It's just kind of interesting is that, and like the Guardian newspaper, we're no longer going to post on here, and Jennifer Rubin, we're never going to post on here, and I mean, even though they've been abused a bit, I think community notes are great.
I actually agree. I think that's it's funny that I have to give a little bit of credit to Elon. I mean, he's even allowed community notes to be on his posts. I know he
Uh-huh.
altered the algorithm for his posts to be wider reaching and kind of everybody now gets the Elon daily text dump, but to allow community notes on his own shit. Okay, that's cool. This I'm taking my ball and going home shit. I'm not going to be here.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're not interested in the conversation, I totally get, like, you might as well for your own purposes. Like, nothing says you have to be involved. But if you're doing it out of spite because you lost, I hate that shit. Like, it's so childish to say, I'm no longer going to be here because of we lost the election, blah, blah. Why didn't you leave before then if it's not a good place? So I hate that shit. I will say, funny enough, talking about taking your ball and going home, Elon specifically posted on Twitter the other day, he actually retweeted a post that it was meant to bash Canada, because if you look at the growth since 1995 of the two countries, the United States and Canada, at around 2000, there's a slight divergence. And then very much after COVID, they have flatlined, and we did the little heartbeat back to normal. And I was instantly struck with, as much as they were trying to burn Canada, all it really did was kind of demonstrate what Democrats have been saying, which is we had the fastest, strongest recovery after COVID. Things aren't perfect, but they're getting better. And you can thank certain policies for that. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it's something I'm deeply interested in, is cognitive dissonance, and how some people like don't want to see it. Because what Elon retweeted, I was like, yeah, look at the fucking graph the picture you just posted. Look at it. You know what I mean? Anyway, did you see? I have to ask you. Yeah,
I did not see that. I will send you a really good article, and it might have been Dave Weigel from Semaphore, or somebody posted it in his thread. But I will post you the article because it's this kind of lefty think tank that's from last year, and it said this is why people are really pissed off about the economy, because if you start doing it in tiers, but I'll send it to you. It was
sure.
It's like, it was one of these. It's a think tank article that's way too long with way too many links, but they kind of make an interesting case. By the way, I didn't know the New York Post was banned in the country of Canada.
Oh, shit, I didn't know that either.
I sent, I'm a hockey guy, and so I sent a hockey Post article to a friend of mine in Canada, and he said, I can't see it. And I said, oh, link wrong? And he goes, no. And it sends a thing that said, like literally, it's on Twitter anyway. Twitter users in Canada, the country of Canada has banned the New York Post, which is kind of fucking insane.
That is really insane.
And again, I mean, I get the New York Post as a tabloid, and I get it's concerned. I get everything, but it's the fucking New York Post. It's not like, you can get the Jacobin in Canada, but you can't get the New York Post. I mean, which I think you should, by the way, I think you should be able to get everything. I think you'll be able to get everything all the time.
I couldn't agree with you more. If you want to read the Taliban Times, read the fucking Taliban Times. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you? There's a famous quote that always resonated with me. It said, "Men fear thought more than anything else."
Yeah, fair.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. Like, we're so afraid somebody might get the wrong idea that we want to limit, like, kind of the inputs that they can have. Whether I agree with you or not, read whatever you want to read. to that point, did you see I don't know
Yeah.
if this sounds conspiratorial or not, but the statement by the Russian guy, Petrovich or whatever his name is, about Donald Trump has certain obligations to forces that enabled his victory. At the same time, I don't think it was RT, I think it was a different station, did a 2-minute segment on Melania showing her nude spreads, like her modeling spreads,
Yeah.
in lingerie, and I think even nude in
Yeah.
shadow in one of them. Have you seen this? Have you
I've
at
seen
all
the
been caught up
Melania.
in this conspiracy theory?
I've seen the Melania nude um, lingerie stuff, and
From the Russian TV station, right?
yeah, and it's previous stuff, and I will say she's fucking spectacular. I mean, it's
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all old. Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's like, it's like the old joke. I had a friend. She once said to me, she goes, "I wish I had posed nude when I could have posed nude." Um, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. That's
I
right.
mean, the conspiracy theory. I mean, okay. I mean, so in 1982, um, I think there's a really good book to be written about the Communist Party in the United States in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, because it was this kind of giant grift on, but what they were grifting is they were actually grifting the Soviet Union.
Uh,
And what they would do is kind of they would stay on ballots and they would run candidates, and that's kind of what they did. But they were getting millions and millions of dollars every year for no apparent purpose. But the president or the head of the Communist Party, a guy named Gus Hall, was also a fascinating figure. Spent time in jail, I think, in the 50s. So he was the Communist Party guy who had a house in Westchester, New York. Um, you know,
uh,
uh, but what they used to do at the end of every election, at the end of 82 elections, where Reagan got destroyed and Republicans got destroyed in 1982, when the Soviet Union fell and all the decrypts, and they could see that, they would send, these kind of formal memos about, our party was instrumental in defeating, Republicans in 1982, and we had all these races that we
right.
won, and the proletariat is finally organized. And it was like this kind of like, taking credit for an earthquake. And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, part of it's that. I mean, the realignment, not realignment, the depth of Trump's win across everything. I mean, the only place Trump did worse was among white men and white people. He
Mm-hmm.
actually dropped a point or two. But it was the
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
scope on that you kind of go like, no, shut the fuck up. It's just like saying I did that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jeff Greenfield used to call
So,
that. Yeah, it's the truck. Jeff Greenfield used to call it, it's the truck, which is a great little anecdote. But
so, the interesting thing about what you're saying as well, and what I thought about is they aren't stupid though. I mean, if you listen to anybody from the intelligence agencies, they give a lot of credit to Russian intelligence. Russian intelligence is quite
sure.
sophisticated and has been around for a long time. So they are very aware that there is a segment of the population, about 50%, that is very fertile soil for them to even say something accusing, making a statement that Trump owes certain
Yeah.
obligations. True or untrue, it now sows discontent in the population. Very smart. The thing that kind of threw me, though, is that Trump didn't say anything about it. He hasn't said about anything about them doing that to his wife and shit like that. For someone who talks a lot of bravado and is very quick to, if anyone insults him that is beneath him, he's
Mhm.
very quick. And that's actually been my biggest. I grew up moving, so I'm very observant of bullying behavior. I can spot bullying tendencies.
Mhm.
Bullies like to pick on people smaller than them.
Yeah.
So if it's him versus like a Rosie O'Donnell, or him versus
Yeah.
what's that actress? Anyway, you get my drift.
Yeah. Right.
So it is actually very interesting that he hasn't said anything such as, it's interesting that you played this about my wife. That doesn't seem like a good idea if you want to end the war in Ukraine, because
Mhm.
now you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a way you could make it very clear you don't know who you're fucking with if you don't want to be fucked with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Or he likes nude pictures of his hot wife being around. Uh,
Yeah, maybe, yeah,
no, I
yeah.
mean,
He's like,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
she's with me.
yeah, point taken, but again, I think that, yeah, I mean, I get it, and like, wait and see. Like I said, Iran issued a statement that we're going to hold off. We were going to, in the Iran statement, and by the way, did you see
Yeah.
the spy that just got arrested? There was a CIA
No, I
operative.
did not.
Yeah, it was today's New York Times. There was somebody working for the CIA who apparently was a double agent and was sending Israeli information about his Israeli plans.
Yep.
Yeah, to
1 hour ago.
it was interesting. And it's this fascinating world that I know nothing about. But he got arrested in Cambodia, and they're taking him to Guam. And I'm like,
Interesting.
I would like to, that's kind of Jean le Carré thing, you know.
Well, I don't know if you know this about me or not. I mean, I've commented on Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy behind you there. I'm deeply fascinated in intelligence and stuff like that. So I follow and I actually connected with John Kiriakou on LinkedIn and a couple other
Okay.
CIA people, and I follow them around podcasts and stuff. I watch them. Many of them have said that in your initial 6-week orientation, when you're brought into the CIA, they will tell you what the biggest threats are that they see. And Israel is always one of the top 3. It's Russia, China, Israel, Iran, North Korea, whatever. But as far as intelligence goes, Israel is not a friend of ours. They have a very active program. So to see that this guy was leaking Israeli, plans to strike Iran and blah, 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 there's something there.
By the way, did I ever say the story about how I was banned from the White House for a couple of years for Russian
you told
spy
me,
stuff?
but I feel like you should tell the audience, because people already think that you're the most interesting guy in the world.
So back in the early 80s, when I was working in DC as staff and had no money, one of the things I used to do is go to embassy parties. And embassy parties were famous when the ambassadors were out of town. They used to have these fucking rock and sex, drugs, and rock and roll blowouts. And I wound up at one of them.
Looking for compromise, Chris.
Yeah, right. And they found me. I was very easily compromised. It was with the rock and cute blonde girl. But anyway, so I was having this thing with this woman, and then the next year or something, I couldn't. I was supposed to go in the White House for a filming thing, and I couldn't get in. And okay, great, And when they looked at it, is that I was security risk. And then in 96, I guess it was, when Clinton pulled all the FBI files, I never thought much about it. But when Clinton pulled all the FBI files of people working on the Dole campaign, or somebody in the Clinton administration, that they never discovered who it was. Well, they kind of did, but it's a long story. But I kind of asked for mine, and you can kind of get it. It takes about a year to get, and you got your thing. And apparently, because this woman I was boning, she was boning half of DC too. I mean, I kind of knew that going in. But one of the guys she was doing that with was a Russian spy, and unbeknownst to me, they wound up deporting her and him. And I was in the loop, and Republican political operative that's like that. And so so anyway, I'm like, but and then then it got rescinded when they kind of realized that I wasn't a double agent.
It's not that he's a double agent. He's a fucking horn dog. That's the only problem.
Right. That was it. Yeah. That was I fell into that thing. Yeah. So anyway, what's really interesting.
Was she Russian?
No, she was South African.
And South Africans are beautiful.
Yeah. And she was stunning and crazy. I mean, she had that kind of a more petite version of that Charlize Theron kind of thing going on.
Nice.
I mean, it was like, Jesus Christ.
That's worth getting deported over, Chris.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it was like, but yeah. But the other thing too is that the more repressed the country, the better the parties. Because it was like, and that was, so you wanted to go to,
That's what I've heard about UAE and Saudi Arabia and some of that shit. Like, the parties there are insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they found Bin Laden with tons of porn in the cave, right? It's like, okay.
Have you seen, there was an article, by the way, we talked about the North Koreans going to Russia. I
Yeah.
read an article. Did you see this article about the North Koreans who, for the first time, have seen porn in
Oh,
the
no,
internet?
no,
Now
no.
they can't pull
Yeah,
them away from
yeah,
the
right,
computers.
right.
It's so insane. You read it. I was reading it and I was like, of course, this is how you actually conquer these countries is you give them the shit to like numb them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sub cabinet sub cabinet in in state is going to be like Department of Porn.
Totally. It's like Radio Free America is now going to be changed to like Pornhub America or
Yeah,
something.
right.
It's
Pornhub
like
America, right?
just
That will be
stream
it.
it to
That's it, right? Yeah, like every
uh
woman, in the United States looks like this or something, right? It was like that was, or this is the
yes,
ugliest,
yes, exactly. And
woman in the United States, right?
all you have to do is pledge allegiance to the
Yeah,
US and turn on your country and it's unlimited women.
yeah. By the way, I
um
was Hunt for Red October was on yesterday on HBO, and I was flipping around.
nice.
Oh, it's such a good movie, but there's this really great scene where Sam Neill and talks about like when we defect, I want to move to Montana uh, and drive it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just really and it's just really kind of interesting. I may have to go back and read. I read the book, decades ago, but like, boy, is that a good friggin' movie. I mean, and
Yeah.
the cast is killer, but the plot is it all takes place in like submarines and little fucking rooms, which is really smart. So
100%.
go into election.
All because he knows he's gonna pull a crazy Ivan.
Yeah, crazy Ivan. So election's still going on. We're still counting stuff. Um,
What about yours specifically?
So in San Diego, I lost. They haven't finished counting because I think they're, but we lost in San Diego. I had the independent candidate that we took a late shot against the Democrat, and it looks like 47 or so by the end of the day.
Okay.
It's okay.
Is this candidate going to have a political future, do you think?
If he wants it. Literally, he was just the angry citizen who said, somebody's got to do something. And he was
Okay.
he wasn't a stalking horse or a backroom deal. He became the recipient of, a rich guy's largesse a month out, but he ran for almost a year as
Okay.
I'm going to be the, angry guy calling that. I'm also doing, I did I'm up in California 13. Duarte, he is up slightly. I mean, he won by 500 votes last time.
Yeah.
Big blow to Adam Gray, who got slaughtered in his hometown. That's usually not a good sign. But depending upon where the votes are and mail stuff, I think it's leaning Duarte, but it's still too close to call. And fucking California. I mean, it's ridiculous how they count votes. I mean, it's fucking stupid. Yeah. Which kind of brings us to Pennsylvania. Actually, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Wisconsin now too. Carrie Lake is, crying, theft and all kinds of fucking crazy shit. And it's like, deep state decided, the one they were going to let Trump win, but her lose. And, the only race I mean, fuck off. And by the way, we've talked about her before, and she's such a fascinating person because, she was like the trusted anchor in Phoenix for 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
And she could have run as a Republican. She could have run as a Democrat, but she decided to run as crazy. Absolutely, blew her ass up. And even this time, she could have won. I mean, I know people that worked on her campaign early, before they got let go, fired, left. And basically the discussion was, all you have to do is kind of say, yeah, I'm sorry. And I got caught up in it. And let me go back to the person and love for 20 years. And she wouldn't do it.
Right.
But
and she was quite an Obama supporter early on too, wasn't she?
Yeah,
I've seen some things of her. She was an Obama supporter.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a million different, kind of consultant mitigations that you could have done to kind of move her back to suburban women, to move her back to moderates. And they really when you look at the results, they really wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. It's like, it's basically like the normal, you're the normal guy you work with. And then one New Year's Eve, he lost his fucking mind and got arrested. And you kind of go like, okay,
yeah,
you're kind of like that. But no, it's
right.
Go like out. So that now,
Yeah.
Huckabee in Wisconsin is also doing. It was stolen in Milwaukee, and like, oh, shut up. And then there's Bob Casey now in
I,
Pennsylvania, which is the really
I mean, they're
interesting.
close. They're really close. I know
Yeah,
they're
no, they're
outside
not
that
though.
0.5%, but they're close
Yeah,
though, right?
no, they're not. There are literally no more votes for him to get among the remaining votes. He would
Mm,
have to win the remaining ballots like 70-30. And they're all
okay.
in kind of Republican areas.
Okay.
And now what they're trying to do, and it's Mark Elias, who's the big Democratic lawyer, and
Yeah.
today they're trying to count votes that were counted that were determined not to be valid because they didn't have signatures, because
Mm,
they didn't have this, because they have that, in Bucks County as a test
mm,
case. And so this is going to go on for a bit. People I know on Casey people, Philly Democrats, and of course, the McCormick
yeah.
people say there's no path for this at all.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen if it hasn't happened already is that whatever goodwill Casey had, he's going to shred as election denier. I mean, the Democrats
Yeah.
I know on that said, Thursday morning it's over.
Right.
I mean, and again, there's no tranche of voters things unless you want to count votes that aren't legitimate votes that were discarded.
Totally.
And
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, the reason I brought up that it was close, but outside of the 0.5% is I think 0.5% triggered an automatic recount, right?
automatic recount. And what's
Um,
also interesting in Pennsylvania
yeah,
is that the Green Party candidate got more than enough votes to elect Casey, but there was also a
yeah.
Libertarian candidate who got double what the Green Party did. So you had
Okay, okay.
almost
Yeah,
100,000 votes that didn't go to either candidate.
yeah. Listen, I think losing is probably. I mean, nobody likes to lose. Losing is a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But you live to fight another day. It's really interesting. As much as I think there's nothing wrong with playing by the rules, I think the rules are he can spend his own campaign money to do a
Yeah.
recount, right? If it's outside of the automatic recount, okay.
Yeah.
But
And okay. Yeah.
challenging throwing out ballots that aren't official because they weren't signed. I think that's the rule. It has to be signed. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And you never know how these things shake out. And again, I've been involved in a bunch of recounts, and I've probably lost as many as I've won. But at a certain
Right.
point, you look at the math and you kind of go, no. And again, I'm not, I don't live in Pennsylvania anymore, but I kind of know the math there. And the people that were telling me, Harris is going to underperform by 50,000 votes in Philadelphia were right,
Yeah.
And, by the way,
It's
the
funny.
Philly,
You brought up Huckabee earlier, and this actually ties in a little bit to the Harris thing. I have this actually on our agenda for today under the "fuck around and find out" section of the programming.
we need to make that a regular section,
Uh,
by the way. That should be our ending section. Fuck around and find out. Right?
yeah. Okay. Well, let's test this one, and then we'll
Yeah.
move it to the
Okay.
end for the next time. But like, what I love is there's some math that suggests the far left of the party, the people who chose either to vote for Trump or not to vote at all because of Gaza specifically, which would line up with the uncommitted vote and kind of like what Jill Stein got and everything else. Mike Huckabee said, did you see this where he said there's no such thing as the West Bank? There's only Judea and Samaria.
No, that's really
Yeah. Yeah.
evangelical, isn't it? That's like hardcore evangelical.
Hardcore evangelical. Not only that, though, it is the antithesis of what you would have voted for, I would think, if you were a of the Muslim community in Michigan. Like comparisons matter. I saw all over Twitter prior to the election, both votes is a vote for genocide. Simply not true. There
Right.
are differences, and if you are an absolutist, you are a nihilist because
Yeah.
nothing is absolute. You have to be able to see the middle ground. I don't know. What is your take? Do you think now? And by the way, Smirtrovich, the finance minister for Israel,
Yeah.
is now saying that they want to take Gaza and start building in Gaza and stuff there. So, like, what do you see now that Huckabee's going to be ambassador to Israel, and with Marco Rubio as the foreign policy and Hegseth as military? Do you think that Israel's going to come to an end, or like the Israeli war is going to come to an end with full occupation of all of Israel-ish, whatever, Palestine?
No, I don't think so. I think that, you're going to see the Arab countries that have reasonable treaties with Israel broker a deal at the end. I think that Iran kind of said, we were going to attack Israel, but we're not now. We're going to wait and see what Trump has to say. I mean, that literally is kind of opening because they control the money to Hamas, and as does Qatar. I think wait and see. I mean, I can't say anything about the situation is optimistic, but it's clearly a new shuffle. Because if you are Hamas, if you are Iran, you can't be happy that, like, you're the United Nations ambassador, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense are in the bomb war category. I mean, that should be like, okay, But by the way, I read a total sidebar, but it's like, these like little nuggets of information you get to kind of eat away at your brain like a RFK Jr. brainworm. So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So there was a really interesting follow on Twitter, a guy named Derek Guy, and he all does fashions and suits and stuff. And he's very funny, very acid tongued. But if you like men's fashion and men's clothes and the history of fashion, he's kind of a fun follow. He posted an article about makeup and men wearing makeup. And, a lot of it was about, Trump's orangeness and, Matt Gaetz, plucked eyebrows. It was, I forget, it was in like GQ or it was some men's forum or something. And like towards the end of it, there was this thing that Antony Blicken has round the clock makeup people for
really
not only doing TV, but for doing, he wears makeup in public appearances all the time. And it was one of these things like, let me go back and read that because I'm reading it off a phone and I probably didn't read it correctly. And then I kind of had to print it out because I'm like, and again, I mean, I get wearing makeup when you go on TV. I get wearing makeup if you're going to speak before the UN and be I kind of get that. But for like wearing makeup at public appearances and like having a makeup person travel with you, what the fuck?
Right.
I mean, and again, is it standard? I don't know.
Is that a government position? Did he hire somebody for the Department of State?
Or I don't know. I mean, it was like one of these things that was like, kind of on my thumbtack note cards to the wall thing. It's like, find out more about that because, and again, I mean, we put makeup on candidates and politicians all the time to do stuff so they look normal under the camera. But like the fact that I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go to a meeting. I want to hold and I'm going to. It just struck me as. I mean, maybe it's practice. Maybe it's common practice. Maybe that's just kind of what happens because you say I'm always going to be on TV and I'm important how I look and stuff like that. But you kind of also go, what? Like, and how do you get that job? Right? I think that'd be a pretty great job. I get to travel the world.
Yeah, if you're Anthony D'Esposito, you get it by banging him, and you can get your daughter a job as well. I think. But did you see he lost? By the way, did you see he lost his seat?
I saw that. It's big tear.
Let me ask you a question. Yeah, right. Do you think, in your expert opinion, I assume Waltz's seat in Florida is going to go Republican. Do you think there's any chance in Stefanik's seat flipping?
Yeah, I think there is. I think in New York you have a special coming up. I think it's a special.
But Hochul can appoint first for 3 months. Is that right? Is that how long it is? Or
is it appointment?
I thought I saw somewhere that Hochul can appoint and then they have to have a special within 3 months.
I thought it
from the vacation from the
I don't. I mean, I know that you can do that in Senate. I thought the process was different from the House.
Okay, maybe it is.
I think it's normally what happens with the House is there's officially no representative, and it is
it stays empty.
It's a caretaker, but the special needs to be held within a certain amount of time. But here's what I will say about special elections is that they tend to favor Democrats because they are low turnout elections, and high income, high education people vote more in low turnout elections. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
I have not looked at her seat. I don't think it's a safe seat, but I don't think it's a I think it's a lean Republican thing that if Republicans nominate somebody normal, will probably win. But
Yeah.
who the fuck knows who the Republicans are going to nominate?
Right. What about on the, it might feel a bit early, but as looking ahead now to what do you take from this election that gives you any thought into the 2025 statewide? Do you think there's a chance? We talked about how competitive New Jersey was. I think 2025 is their gubernatorial year.
Yeah.
Also, 2025 is Virginia's.
Yeah.
I think we both agree that Spanberger's the horse to beat in that race.
Yep.
But Kentucky, I think that's just legislature because Bashir won in 23, I think, right? You did that cycle of the executive
legislature. Kentucky's 27. Kentucky, Mississippi are 27.
So what do you see kind of, do you think this continues, I guess is my question. Do you think this kind of move towards, we saw that map, we talked about that map where everything moved to the right between 22 and 24. Do you think that continues? And do you think that we maybe see a Republican governor in New Jersey?
Yeah. I mean, I think a Republican governor in New Jersey is contingent upon Donald Trump's first year. If it turns out to be the typical kind of thing, and it's kind of a disaster and chaos and stuff, then I think that you will get a Democratic governor again. But the Democrats running to replace Murphy, there are a couple who are kind of batshit kind of resistance lefties who could lose. It would be so out of touch with the state that they would lose the primary. But if you are a Democrat in New Jersey, Murphy barely won in his reelect. And then the state comes, 4.5 points almost to Trump, which is shocking, because, in 2018, there was a moderate Yugon, who spent a ton of money running against the crook, Menendez, and he got slaughtered. He got did less well than Trump, percentage wise. So it could, but like New Jersey is kind of like a dysfunctional state, and Murphy has been, and New Jersey's one. And again, I lived in New Jersey for 20 years, but it's this kind of crazy high tax, bad service, kind of what the fuck are you people doing kind of thing. It's kind of tone deaf in the way California is. And again, I mean, and it's got populations. It's got a significant Latino population that's moving slightly right. It's got this hardcore South Jersey is very conservative and getting more so. And the same thing with the middle of the state. But like literally the Harris problem that Democrats, the perception, correctly or incorrectly, that Harris was woke and crazy and for stupid shit. That's what people think about New Jersey Democrats. And Murphy, who's a billionaire, tried to buy his wife a Senate seat, which was crazy.
Right.
He bought his daughter a professional soccer team, and he tried to buy his wife a Senate seat. And it's this kind of weirdness that, and I say weirdness not like in calling Trump that whole gambit, calling Trump and Vance weird, but it's just kind of like weirdness, like what the fuck are you people doing? Because nothing works in New Jersey, and so
he was like, what the hell else am I supposed to do with my billions of dollars besides buy my wife a Senate seat?
well, he's running for chair of the DNC.
That's exactly what the Democratic Party needs.
Apparently the three names that I heard were Phil Murphy, Stacey Abrams, for Christ's sake, and
oh Jesus Christ,
and there was a third, and you kind of go, what? Like this is like and to which I was like, as a Republican, like any of the three of them would be great because they're like kind of third their children for.
What do you look for in the chair of the party? That's a good question. Actually, I'm very curious about. I mean, there've been some. I think that's kind of what made Clinton big, right? Didn't he lead the DCCC or so? Or no, he was the head of the Democratic Governors Association or something, right? And like,
kind of the head of
anyway.
What the function that if you have the White House, if you own the White House, the function of the national committees is to fund projects the White House wants to do and frankly, to pay political consultants for the White House. And
Okay.
that's kind of what they do. In the 80s, famously, the RNC paid, I think it was Richard Worthland, the pollster, and literally they polled every day. They commissioned a poll every day. So they had this tremendous amount of data, and they'll do stuff like that. Out of power, it's more interesting because out of power becomes about candidate recruitment. It becomes about policy. It becomes about, which is very important, is the presidential nominating process. So one of the reasons you have Trump is that in 2012, the Republicans had this kind of long march, slug grind primary where, less than a month before the convention, like 3 weeks before the convention, Mitt Romney was still fighting Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum, for Christ's sake. And so the Republicans said, we're going to have like a quick win. We're going to not do this anymore. So the nominee has time. So flash forward to 2016 and you get this beginning Trump wave. And by Super Tuesday, even though Trump only had a little over a third of the vote, it was over. He was the nominee. And the Democrats and the Democrats did the same thing. They had, Bernie, Hillary, which went on right up until the convention. But then in 2020, they had this kind of quick kill that, frankly, after Super Tuesday, after South Carolina, it was over and Biden was going to be the nominee. So like, 4 elections in, it was over. And so kind of balancing that out, there's a lot of
in a way, based on what you're saying, I could actually see, I feel like Stacey Abrams is pretty good at recruiting people. That's the one thing I think she'd be good at. I think maybe she raises some money as well. I know that she's done some of that. I don't know how successfully, but I definitely don't think that she would be at the top of my list, interestingly enough. It's funny. Did you see the kind of James Carville rants lately about the DNC? And
he's right. And he's 100% right on what.
He's not fucking holding back. That's for sure.
No, and he doesn't have to because he's got his fuck you money and he won when people didn't. And I think that, he is not incorrect. I think it's with all his stuff, it's a little hyperbole. But I hear we will call more civil versions of what he said, from my Democrat consultant friends. They think the party is dysfunctional and they think way too many people, it's way too bureaucratic and people have drunk the Kool-Aid. And, this kind of NGO to campaign back to NGO stuff. And, in it, you get a bunch of kids. It used to that you would work on campaigns, local campaigns, you would do your thing, and then you were brought into the national committees for basically polish. They become a finishing school. And then you could go out and do campaigns. Now what it is that kind of big donors have bought their kids slots to committees. And so you go from college.
How interesting.
You go from college, not 100%, but there's a lot of it. And then all of a sudden you wind up in these places and you've never done a fucking campaign. You've never knocked on a door. You've never manned a phone bank. You've never written a piece of mail. You've never looked at a survey. And all of a sudden you are a Washington expert. And, you're obviously a smart person because you went to an elite college. And so it doesn't take you long to learn the jargon, and you gain your opinion from what you see on cable talk and podcasts and shit. So you can kind of like mouth the thing and all of a sudden you're running campaigns that you have no business running or being involved with or making a decision. And the Republican Congressional Committee, which I was a consultant for this year, they kind of ended that. These people were a bunch of fucking mediums. They were really driven, it was a really pleasurable experience to work with them because they were all killers and they were all kind of campaign people, who were very open to everything, but understood data, understood campaigns, it was, and anyway, but my Democratic friend says that's the problem right now with a problem with them.
Well, I know that I think the best question I There's one other thing that was on my mind coming in today. I was on Veterans Day. I wanted to get some work done. I went to Starbucks, was doing some work, and I met this guy who fought in Vietnam as a Marine. I hear him on the phone before we met, and he's talking all kinds of politics. So when he gets off the phone, I say, he's with his buddy. I say, I think you'd be really interested in what we do at Fantasy Elect. We have this kind of long conversation, and he says, kind of comes up, he says, I think they should crown Trump king on Inauguration Day. I was like, really? Like seriously? Without undermining him or making fun of him, like, do you mean that? Like, seriously, as a king? Or kind of, he's like, well, he only has one term left. That's not enough. I think, we need him in longer. And he goes into like, there's like a king song that they should play and everything. I thought it was really interesting that somebody who had fought for the country, fought for democracy, fought for American democracy and freedoms would have this thought. And then I'm having a conversation with someone last night, and we're talking about they're going to vote for the Senate leader today.
Uh-huh.
And he said, who do you think it's going to be? And I said, well, Chris thinks it's going to be Thune. And he says, God, I hope not. He's the same as McConnell. And I said, oh, like, yeah, okay. Like, how do you mean the same? And he said, liberal. And I said, you think Mitch McConnell's a liberal? Like,
right.
And he said, yeah. I said, why? And he said, well, he didn't spend any money on Cruz, but he sent all that money to Larry Hogan in Maryland.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, that might have just been strategy, right? Like, he didn't think Cruz needed it. He thought he could flip a seat with a popular former governor in Maryland. Maybe it was strategy. I said, also, it's probably because he fucking hates Ted Cruz. But I said, I'm not sure that makes him a liberal. And I said, why do you think he's a liberal? Like, what is a liberal to you? And he said, well, he wants to keep everything the same. And I said, I think that's like literally the definition of a conservative, isn't it?
Right.
Like, right. And he said, well, I just don't like him. And Chris, I shit you not, something flipped in my mind. I realized that starting with Reagan did this very well. He used the word liberal as an epithet. Like it was a pejorative. And now it's the same thing with Rhino. It isn't that it has any real meaning. It's just meant to be an epithet of, I don't like you, and now I'm labeling you as something I think I don't like. And
so can I do a great deed?
Yep.
I got a great, I can't believe you brought this up because I was actually talking to somebody about this. So the DNA on liberal. So one of my mentors, a guy named Arthur Finkelstein, who I've talked about before, was famous in the 70s and 80s, 90s, but 70s and 80s for using the word liberal as a pejorative. And he's a liberal. That's it. He's and he took a ton of shit about it. And, we would even do races where we would say, as insurance commissioner, Chris Mottola raised insurance rates 23% on the average drive. That's liberal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And it didn't matter what it is. You ended with that's liberal. And his theory was, well, I'm doing that because the fewest voters in a survey self-identify as liberal. So if you've only got 23% of 70% saying that there's something, then you can kind of assume that the other 70%, 80% don't agree with them. And he said, if they were conservative, I would be saying, he raised taxes 23%. That's conservative. He said, it's like you said, it's a meaningless. I mean, philosophically, Arthur was very philosophical and had thought this stuff through. But as a functional piece of, like, I work in politics and I've got tactics and strategy, it was simply pejorative. It was anything. My dog got pregnant because the neighbor's dog got off leash. That's liberal, right? By
the way, the most liberal group of people in American politics history, the Founding Fathers. The most liberal group in American political history. They literally upended the conservative establishment of the time, and they completely were liberals.
Yeah, they were shockingly progressive and modern and bomb throwers to an extent that
exactly right.
That you can't possibly imagine. They could not exist today. And they were
all
also
right, Chris. Anything? Yeah.
No. The only thing I
Anything we
would note,
didn't,
the only thing I would note is that, both you and I are kind of channeling, once again, we're on the same wavelength because we're channeling maritime faction today. You've got Nautica and I've got Andy and Red's sailboat tours, from
oh,
Shawshank.
nice.
Right? So that's what we're doing.
I didn't realize that was a Shawshank
Yeah,
reference, but
yeah,
God damn it, it is. What a great movie, by the way.
yeah. That's one of those movies
Have you ever been? Is say Guataneo a real place in Mexico?
yeah, it is. It is. And it's not, apparently it's a little different than it would have been back then. But I think
Sure.
Stephen King probably picked it because it's a lovely name. But that's one of
Yeah.
those movies that, if you're flipping the channel and you see it, hope it's towards the end because you're stuck fucking watching it. I mean, that's like,
For sure.
I mean, I've had to watch that hundreds of times and I never get tired of watching it.
Nah.
And it did
Yeah.
terrible at the box office. And kind of got snubbed in the Academy Award. Like, you look like, how the fuck could Morgan Freeman not have won an Academy Award for that, right?
100%. And
Actually,
you know what I love is like
I wonder who won it that year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a good question. While you're looking that up, I'm going to tell you that one of my favorite things about movies is like when there is a philosophical takeaway from it. And I swear to God, the most important thing anybody could ever learn is to get busy living or get busy dying. And time is short. Get busy living or get busy dying.
And it's interesting because the short story, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank.
Yeah.
He was nominated for Best Actor. Hold on. Let's see who won it. Oh, I'm going to make fucking scream. Hold on. The short story's okay. It's not great. It's pretty good. Yeah, Tom Hanks won his Forrest Gump. The nominations were Travolta in Pulp Fiction, Paul Newman in Nobody's Fool. Nobody's Fool is an excellent movie, by the way. Nigel Hawthorne in The
Pulp
Madness
Fiction's a great movie, and that's a great performance by John Travolta too.
Yeah, Madness of King George. Morgan Freeman and Tom Hanks is Forrest Gump. And that's, by the way, William Goldman, who wrote All the President's Men and wrote a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
He had this thing, and he said, as an Academy voter, you never vote for an addict in a performance. You never vote for an addict or somebody that's mentally incapacitated. And he said, so like voting for Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man.
John Travolta. Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man or Hanks as Forrest Gump. He goes, you never do that because the whole thing is a cheat. And Goldman made a pretty compelling case that there was a best actor in Rain Man, and it was Tom Cruise. Because, Hoffman was basically playing the same thing one note. And Cruise had to do like 3 pages, like, Judge Wapner's on, and then Cruise does like 3 pages of exposition and plot, right?
Yes.
Time for Wapner, and he does, and you go back and you look at it and you go, fuck, you're right. I mean, he was great in that movie.
Man, we've never talked about this, but one of my something that angers me a bit is the trajectory of Tom Cruise's career, because his early 90s movies were so disparate and so good. Born on the 4th of July, Rain Man,
great movie.
So many great movies that he did. And then he just fell into like this, I'm the Mission Impossible guy, and it annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And Rain Man is something that my mother and I share. We both love the movie and we make references all the time, right? The People's Court. We talk about this shit like Twist and Pulled and Hurt My Neck in 1989. We could throw it out all day long. But you're right. It may be even better than Born on the 4th of July, because I can only imagine how difficult it was to act with that, right?
Yeah.
It's like acting with a kid basically in every scene.
Yeah, or an animal or something. And again, not taking it away from Dustin Hoffman. I mean, Hoffman's a great actor, but it's kind of like a one note thing. And Cruise has got to go.
Yeah, it's like Tropic Thunder, right? You never go full retard. That's kind of William Goldman's point.
I mean,
I wanted to share with you. We had a couple pieces of comments on some stuff that we posted on TikTok.
Sure.
Some people really hate us, Chris, and I had fun responding to them. Yeah. So one person said about what we talked about, tell me you don't know what you're talking about without telling me you don't know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah. one guy said, because this was actually, I posted about what we both said, Trump should just play golf and like ride the high and take credit for it, the trajectory. One person said that we're delusional. They actually used the word delulu, but I'm not a fucking Gen Z, so I'm not going to say that. And one guy said, the stock market hit a 2-year high on November 6th. It's Trump, not Biden, basically. That was Austin 89. Maybe he lives in Austin. All right, Chris, I think that's any comments to them. I just responded that you're right. We don't know dick. We just kind of bullshit, and maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong. So what's your over under on the number of rounds before Tyson knocks out Jake Paul?
Oh, Jesus. 2.
Are you going to watch it?
Yeah, I'm going to watch it just because it's going to be a fucking train wreck. But by the way, my favorite all-time comment, which you can't see on my other room, I've got a bunch of campaign stuff on the wall, but in the Washington Post, I had a comment. There was an article about some work that I'd done, and the first comment was, now they bring out the real scum like Mottola. And I framed it, and I blew it up, and I framed it, and it sits on my wall. It's my favorite comment. So keep those cards and letters coming, folks, right?
Yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming. All right, I'll see you next week.
All right, you bet. Bye.
Bye. Well, I think the best place to end it here is with how Mottola just ended it, which was keep the cards and comments coming. I mean, listen, just so you know, Austin 89 and all of the other people that comment, I actually do enjoy it. And also, so you know, I think I'm wrong most of the time, and I like to hear how people think I'm wrong. It helps me better form my understanding of the world. I already know what I believe, and I am suspicious of it most of the time. So happy to be proven wrong, be told I'm wrong, but please just let me know why, other than it's what you think. Also, no one has taken me up on this offer to join us. Now would be the perfect time to play-by-play Monday morning quarterback. How did we get to where we are? Why did Kamala lose? Why did the Senate flip? Why did the House stay in? Why is there a trifecta government, right? So anybody who's interested would love to have you come on and join us. And then I guess the last thing is, we're the cabinet is filling up. We have a Fantasy Elect. FantasyElect.io is the website, but we have a contest specifically for cabinet selections. And I think it'd be a really fun contest. So many different ways to play the sport of politics. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Talk to you then.
Draft picks in the Senate, game on the floor. Campaign slogans echo final scores. Analysis deep as the trench warfare set. We break it down, no sweat, no net. Balance and touchdowns, where's your bet? Candidate playbooks, lines we set. Irreverent and free, we call it out. Competition fierce, ain't no doubt. And a Hail Mary pass. Legislation touchdowns, who's top class? Elections heated, brackets tight. Political fantasy, bring the night. Cynical plays and cynical ploys. Draft your politicians, trade your boys. Tackle the issues, fumble through lies. Only the sharp survive in our eyes. Campaign trails and field goals fade. Winners and losers.